Proportional Response, Book 1, Chapter 23, Part 4, Schemes and Personal Touches. Major Mendes didn't like having his fate determined by others, even though it seemed he'd spent his entire life with exactly that problem. Or, more accurately, he'd spent his entire life fighting against that problem. Yet, here he sat, with the League Council light years away making decisions, and far too narrowly avoiding disasters, which dictated how he had to run his rebellion. He placed his hands wide on the table and took a deep breath through his nostrils. They handled it well though. You chose your allies wisely, and they aren't dictating my fate. I am. It is just harder to do with so much dependent on people I don't know. And then that damned girl running around like a loose cannon, popping off any voter she can get her hands on. Someone knocked on his door, the sound of fist on metal reverberating through the small ship. As soon as he waved the door open, his head, Spymaster, came in, sighed, and dropped heavily into a chair. The man gave him a look he knew all too well.
Okay, out with it. Is something bothering you, or do you have more bad news for me? Both.
The man replied as he reached over and hit a couple of buttons on the desk, causing a report to come up.
More of the weird stories and rumors we have been chasing down, and identifying where they came from. All of it is from one voter's house or another, and all of them are either under Jarrett's thumb or part of her circles. Tracing some of it back is easy enough, of course. Some of the public statements the voters are making, it just makes no sense. The voters are generally careful to present a relatively unified front to the populace, and now they are revealing themselves to be the disorganized mess that we both know them to be, or would be. If everything wasn't so completely garbled, conflicting noise, they are up to something I can't figure out, and I don't like it. I may have some insight on that, but you said both. What is the other thing? She has done it again.
Mendes sighted and rubbed the ridge between his eyes.
Who did FNth kill this time? Someone competent, or failing that, at least some sort of problem, I hope. No such luck. Low-gen voter who had been pushed into a clerical job because he wasn't good for much else and was even doing that poorly. He was in a supply office which moved food out to various military production facilities. His mismanagement had been causing food shipments to be delayed and, sometimes, rerouted. We had been looking into using his incompetence to poison a bunch of workers. Nothing fatal, just make them sick and slow production down.
Mendes pounded the desk.
That damned girl, all she is doing is making the voters we actually need to get rid of harder to hit. Why won't she go after the targets we give her at least? Because we are choosing those targets on our own criteria. Namely, those who are most competent, whose deaths will hamper the war effort or cause discomfort for the populace in some way. She chooses them on how much harm they are doing directly to citizens. Apparently, this guy was well known for forcing himself on women, particularly young ones.
Mendes shook his head.
We have to get her under control, or eliminate her. Yay, I have an idea about that. Short version, let me deal with it. Long version, you keep giving me target lists to give to her, and she is not stupid. Going after, say, Gillette, like you tried to get her to do, would get even someone with her abilities killed. Which would be a waste, boss. She is a damned good fighter. So, let me make up my own target lists for her. I can find targets that are high value for us, competent and contributing to the war, who also fit the sort of criteria she is after. Side benefit is that we will still have her around when we move from nipping at the voters to actually biting them.
Mendes nodded.
Okay, fine. She is your problem. Sometimes I regret asking the humans to go fetch the little snot, but you're right. She's damn good at making voters die.
He then hit a couple of buttons to send data to his Spymaster's pad.
As for the topic you started with, I have just sent you some reading material. One of them is excerpts from a primer on techniques used for confistration. The parts about overwhelming the public with information in the form of both insane opinions and conflicting facts. The other is a gift from our new Bytha friends, a human book written a little before the humans discovered what was going on. The title may seem strange to you, but it was apparently a date that was in the not-too-distant future from when the book was written, and was designed to serve as a warning. Read those as quickly as you can, then compare what you find to what all that information is doing out there.
The Spymaster nodded slowly, while skimming some of the material.
I'm not entirely unfamiliar with the concept. though I will admit I have only a passing knowledge of it at best. Still, if that is their reason, what is their goal? Plan C. A population which is hit with this hard enough, for long enough, tends to become malleable. Basically, you bombard them with so much chaos that they are willing to grasp anything that promises order. Also, if you can take enough control of the various narratives, you can prime the public to be ready to accept almost any premise you want them to, regardless of the underlying proclivities of their culture.
The spymaster nodded, then looked up at him sharply.
No, you don't think even Jalat would?
Mendesh nodded.
I think she might. Sadly, the best counter to this sort of play seems to be more chaos, and to make sure that whatever hope gets offered at the end of the line gets drowned in that chaos. If the counter is done right, it will lead to an outright rejection of whatever violation of cultural principles the campaign managers intend. The difficulty is that you have to know what they intend so you can use the right counters.
Mendesh held back a smile as he saw the light go off in his underling's eyes. The man then leaned back, gave him a very large, toothy grin, and spoke.
I will read this stuff, boss, but I think what you just gave me may be enough. I can think of 3 things that Mistress of Mischief might be planning to foist on us all, and I can already tell you how, using their own techniques as I have seen them, to counter them.
Mendesh leaned forward and narrowed his eyes at the man.
Read first, then plan. This is not an exact science, not even close, and it is terribly easy to fall right into your opponent's hands. Remember that Jat has voters on her side who have overseen confiscations using these methods, and you are just learning them.
The spymaster's face fell slightly, but he took the reproof with professionalism.
Very well. I will read first, and make my people do the same. We will have counterplans available to you for approval as fast as we can.
This won't do. He's unhappy about all this now. Time to counter the reprimand's damage.
Just keep me updated on the broad strokes. You are the one who is the expert in these sorts of things, and I expect your background will allow you to glean a lot more from that reading material than I did. I trust you and your people to get it right, so don't wait for my approval unless you are taking major risks.
The man sat up a little straighter and gave him a crooked smile to indicate that he knew what had just been done, but that he was also fine with it. The spymaster then answered him in a slightly wry tone.
Thanks, boss. Sorry, I was mostly annoyed with myself anyway. Still, you have that look about you, that you have something else to discuss.
Mendesh drew his brow ridges together, then shook his head. Of course my spymaster can read me like a book. Wouldn't be much good otherwise, would he?
No, I really wouldn't.
It took all of Mendesh's control not to start in surprise, but, again, the man knew him too well. They shared a brief laugh. Then Mendesh sent some more data to the spymaster's pad.
I just got this message. You can see the channels it went through to get here. I want you to double check and make sure it is legitimate. I am relatively sure it is, but we need to be very, very sure before we act. If it is legit, I will need.
The spymaster had given him a quizzical look, then turned to his pad, and interrupted him by nearly jumped up out of his chair.
The intel we could gain. You realize what it would mean. Wait, though, if we do as he asks, Jalat will know, and he loses his value.
The man's eyes narrowed.
Unless, of course, we can make it look like it wasn't us. If we can make it look like it was a rival voter, she will have to try to keep this guy convinced that she still has her leverage. She can't exactly replace him after all. That means she won't even be able to investigate effectively.
The man gave the hard, cold smile Mendesh knew meant the wheels in his brain had turned.
I'll verify it, and I'll find the targets, then we can plan the op. Just be careful. If it looks too good to be true, it is probably a trap. I know, boss. I'm not going to double check this. I'm going to interrogate it a dozen ways to yesterday. I'll let you know what I find.
Inibal looked into the mirror and smiled. Today. Finally, it ends today. We have the votes, and the Zoltans are out of time, have been out of time for a few weeks, and they have no military option. He straightened his best robes, made sure that every fold and crease was exactly in place. He was ready to go, but was too busy reveling in the moment to want to step away from the mirror yet. I just wish I knew whether Henry and company were responsible for those incidents which happened when the Exaltans began changing the way the bombs on their ships worked, locking them away from the QCAM. I can't argue with the results though. They still only have less than a quarter of their fleet fully available to them, nearly 6 months after humanity destroyed 2 of their fleets. He checked his hair, again, and made sure it was all in place. He wanted it to be perfect. The humans had only been forced to blow up one more small invasion force before Sultan High Command had gotten the message. I am just glad it is done. We elect Kaz to Prime Minister, force the broadcast through the Republic, and the myth of Sultan supremacy gets the last crack it needs. I just hope the intel folks are right, and some of those suicidal loyalty officers will stand down when they hear the news. His comms device beeped, and he sighed slightly, then moved to his living room for the morning debrief. He swept through the door with a huge smile, but felt that smile crack when he saw nothing but hard faces with mouths pressed into thin lines. His mood fell hard. Yoro got up and grabbed his hand, pulled him to the couch, and sat with him. When did she get so familiar with me? Why did I not notice? He felt his hands blush and subconsciously tried to hid them in his robes. What would Lyra think? His eyes darted to Yoro's, and she simply gave him that small smile of hers while she gave his hand a small squeeze. His chagrin darkened his hands further. Probably something like, "Good. Auntie Yoro is taking care of you like I asked."